Affirmative.
Imagine a person working 48 hours a week and only earning $7.25 per hour. That only earns the person $15,080 a year. That's barely enough to afford a one-bedroom apartment. The federal minimum wage should be raised to $15 an hour. Therefore, the minimum wage should be raised because it would increase school attendance and decrease the amount of high school dropout rates. We are here to prepare to hear what our opponents are here to say. Is business employees would lay off employees and raise off employee levels, or that it may force companies to close our 3-minute arguments. We hope to convince you that a minimum wage increase. According to a 2014 study, they found that raising the minimum wage to $13 in California would increase the incomes of 7.5 million families, which would mean in low areas like Mississippi, where cost of living is especially low, employers would need to spend more to pay their minimum wage employees, which is what should be raised. Also, increasing the minimum wage, which is why we should increase the minimum wage.
Those earning a higher minimum wage would have enough to eat, be more likely to exercise, less likely to smoke, and suffer from fewer psychological problems. That results in preventing premature deaths a year. If you look at issues that impact health, income is at the top of the list. No person should lose their life because they don't earn a certain amount of money. It's also very difficult to raise a family on minimum wage. Most of the time, you can't even buy a one-bedroom apartment. Procon.org taught me that the average worker earns $51,000 a year, and someone earning minimum wage is earning $11,000 a year. 2 wage workers in the same household would barely reach above poverty level. Children and families aren't usually brought up when it comes to this topic, but that should change. I think he's really closing.
Got it. Go ahead.
All right. Because the federal minimum wage is not indexed for inflation, its buying power has decreased significantly. Since its peak in 1968, and that time minimum wage was $1.60, which is equivalent to $11.16 in January, which is 53.9% higher than today's $7.25. $7.25. Between July 2015 and the last increase of minimum wage, it has lost 8.1% of its purchasing power to inflation. While the estimates of how much minimum wage should be increased differ, many economists agree that if it had kept pace with rising productivity and incomes, it would be higher than the currency of $7.25 an hour. According to a study by CEPR, or also known as the Center for Economics and Policy Research, the federal minimum wage would have been $21.72 per hour in 2012 instead of $7.25 of the minimum wage, when it's kept pace with productivity and increases since 1968.
Negative, your opening arguments, please.
Who doesn't love money? We all do, but raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour will have more negative impacts than positive. Raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour would create more problems than solutions. If minimum wage raises, low-skilled workers and inexperienced workers would get pushed out of work. Our second argument is companies wouldn't be able to hire or pay their workers, resulting in less job opportunities. Finally, resources would cost a lot more and many more people would be left jobless, resulting in more poverty.
Our first argument is that the raise in minimum wage would push low-skilled workers and experienced workers out of work. Low-skilled workers that need the jobs the most will be pushed out of work, and jobs altogether will be run by machines with the new technology we have begun to create, which will eliminate even more jobs altogether. Therefore, raising the minimum wage will push low-skilled workers and high-skilled workers out of their jobs. Our second argument states that companies would not be able to hire or pay their workers, creating in less job opportunities. It's obvious that every manufacturer cannot afford starting wages of $15 for everyone. So the high-skilled and highly educated workers that do not deserve to be pushed out of work will be pushed out of work, states Andy Pooser of Wall Street Journal. The vice president of White Castle recently stated that if the federal minimum wage was raised, that they would have to close over half of its stores and let go thousands of workers. As a result, jobs are being destroyed, businesses are suffering, and all the government needs to do is leave the federal minimum wage alone. For these reasons, the federal minimum wage should not be raised to $15 per hour because companies simply can't afford it.
Finally, resources would cost a lot more and many more people would go jobless, resulting in more poverty. The fight for a higher wage would leave millions with no wage at all. The Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland found that when minimum wages increase, hours in employment are declined, causing poverty. When wages rise, so does the cost of making goods. There is no doubt that raising the minimum wage to $15 would increase the poverty level and the cost of resources. Therefore, the minimum wage should not be increased.
Teams, take your 2 minutes to prepare your rebuttals and make sure you're addressing each other's arguments in those rebuttals.
Yeah, you was reading that.
Boy, RJ, you were looking down the whole time.
I know you were looking at me for laughing. Every time you look at me for laughing.
I don't think I looked up.
You never did, good.
They is.
Yeah.
I looked up twice.
They is. They don't look at me.
Okay, so
You're gonna laugh.
that's crazy. I was either gonna laugh or
That was.
die.
I started laughing as soon as I got up there. Yeah.
So I just read off the note card and looked straight down because I'm not.
You just started
act like they're
laughing.
not there.
Huh?
Are you afraid of crowds?
Oh well, when I'm in a crowd, I'm fine. When speaking to a crowd,
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
no.
that's what I'm saying. Like, speaking of crowds.
All right, teams, that's 2 minutes. Audience, if you come back together, please. Affirmative, please present your rebuttals.
My opponent states that upping the minimum wage would increase poverty. But but from my research says otherwise. If each person is earning more money, they will have enough to feed them and their family. It would also increase job opportunities. If through minimum wage is raised, it would lift 300,000 people out of poverty. That is a fact from a 2014 study.
Negative rebuttals first?
My opponent may say that raising the minimum wage would actually create more jobs and people more opportunities, when actually it would make a lot less job opportunities and it would actually bring more people into poverty. When they raise the minimum wage, it pushes a lot more people out of jobs because businesses can't afford to pay a lot of customers a lot of money because you have to pay for the building and taxes and stock and all that for your business. So it would greatly damage the businesses. And even if you were that lucky few that were able to stay in the business, how things usually work, once more people are able to afford more stuff, they usually raise prices on stuff, which actually raise the minimum wage because since things will go up in price, less people will be able to afford them.
Affirmative closing, please. Affirmative, I need your closing.
Despite representing 47% of U.S. workers, women make up 63% of minimum wage workers. African Americans represent 12% of the U.S. workforce and make up 17.7% of minimum wage earners. 16% of the labor force is Hispanic and they represent 21.5% of workers making minimum wage. In a time where the median income for women is 78%. Of the national median income in African Americans and Hispanics make 67 and 79% of the median income respectively. Increasing the minimum wage is necessary to create a more equitable income for distribution and disadvantaged groups.
Raising the annual minimum wage would actually create a lot more problems than it would solutions. It would push low and high skilled workers out of work because places aren't able to afford to pay workers. Also, it would build less jobs because they can't afford them, so a lot of people would get a lot less jobs. And finally, resources would actually cost a whole lot more because as I said before, more people would be able to afford more stuff, so therefore they would raise the prices because people can afford more stuff. And is getting a higher wage worth pushing a lot of people out of jobs and ruining a lot of businesses? I think the minimum wage should not be raised.
Great, round of applause for that group, please.